thought for today is the sole purpose of a child's middle name is so that they can tell when they're really in trouble. I remember hearing from my mom, Francis Joseph, quite a bit as I was a little kid. Today I wanted to talk about St. Marianne Cope. Today is her feast day, January 23rd. She was the Mother Teresa of the 19th century. She was the one who worked with the lepers and took over Father Damien's work after he died on the island of Molokai. She would spend 35 years working among the lepers, a remarkable woman, and her story is told in one of the greatest books on the lives of the saints, Modern Saints, Their Lives and Faces. There's 3 volumes of this book, and it's beautiful because it has photographs of Mother Marianne, as she was known to her lepers. She was born on January 23rd, today's date, in the year 1838. She was born in Germany, in Heppenheim, Germany, and her real name in German was Koob, K-O-O-B was the family's last name, but when they came through Ellis Island, it was changed to Cope, C-O-P-E. And her family emigrated to the United States, to Utica, New York, before she took the name Marianne in religious life. Her name was Barbara. So Barbara was only 18 months old when they landed in the United States, and she was raised in Utica, New York, and eventually there were 7 brothers and sisters, and it was a poor, struggling family. The father had many health issues, and so even though Barbara at a young age really wanted to become a religious sister and join the Franciscans, she waited from the age of really 17 until she was 24, so she could work in the factory and earn money for her mom and dad and help to raise the younger children. But eventually, at the age of 24, she was able to enter the Sisters of St. Francis in Syracuse, and she began teaching school. She was found to be just an excellent administrator, and she was so good in dealing with people. She worked in the hospitals as well, and became the superior of the St. Joseph's Hospital in Syracuse in 1870. And then she was chosen to be the Mother Provincial of her order. And that's when she got a request from the King of Hawaii. In 1883, the Hawaiian government the king wrote letters to 50 religious orders of women throughout the world asking for help with the lepers. Father Damien had been there for many years with his brothers, working especially with the men and the boys, but they needed women religious to work with the women and the girls that had contracted leprosy. And it was really a pandemic, an epidemic in those days. And so 50 religious orders received the invitation, only one said yes, and that was the Franciscans in Syracuse. Mother Marianne said, yes, we will go, and she left with 6 of her sisters to travel by boat to Hawaii. They worked 5 years on Honolulu and managed the hospital there of lepers. And then for those, of course, who had very serious cases, they were shipped off to the island of Molokai. Sister Marianne also worked on the island of Maui and set up the first hospital on Maui, and then set up schools for young girls. They say during her life, she helped establish 40 schools as well as 3 hospitals. But then, of course, the call came to go to Molokai. Father Damien was dying, so she went, and for the last 6 months of his life, nursed him and took care of him. And then after his death, she really took over that until her death at the age of 80. So she would spend 35 years there. One interesting thing is, if you've ever read Treasure Island by Robert Louis Stevenson, a phenomenal book. He had traveled to Hawaii, had met Father Damien, was so impressed with his work. He met Mother Marianne, so impressed with her work that he donated a piano to her so that she and the nuns would have music for the leper women and girls. He also donated some croquet sets so that he'd teach them how to play croquet. And in 1899, Robert Louis Stevenson wrote this very short poem about Mother Marianne and her sisters. It's so powerful because he saw the horrific devastating effects of leprosy upon the individual, both physically and spiritually and socially. So he writes, "To see the infinite pity of this place, the mangled limb, the devastated face, the innocent sufferers smiling at the rod, a fool were tempted to deny his God. He sees and shrinks, but if he looks again, lo, beauty springing from the breast of pain. He marks the sisters on the painful shores, and even a fool is silent and adores." So he was so impressed by these heroic sisters. And Sister Marianne was, again, she said to her sisters that they would themselves never become lepers. They said, "God will protect you, and you will never be a leper, nor will any sister of our order." And that's exactly what happened. She never contracted leprosy herself. None of her sisters ever contracted leprosy, even though they were in daily contact with those in the advanced stages of the disease. But God did protect them, and of course they were very big on cleanliness, and they did such a good job at being able to work with the lepers, changing their linens and dispensing the medications. But she's also enriched their lives through art and beauty. She taught the girls and the women how to paint and how to grow vegetable gardens and how to make their own dresses with beautiful material and put ribbons and bows in their hair. And so she had a great love of beauty. She would die at the age of 80 after a long illness, and she was beatified by Pope Benedict in 2005. It was his very first beatification after he became Pope. And believe it or not, in 2012, it was his last canonization. So really, Sister Marianne Cope was the bookends of Pope Benedict's papacy of those 7 years. If you go to Syracuse, New York, you can go visit her tomb, which is kept in the beautiful mother house of the Franciscan sisters in Syracuse. So she really is Mother Marianne, the great, really Mother Teresa of the 19th century, and the one who was really the female version of Father Damien the leper. So we now have Saint Damien, and we have Saint Marianne Cope, and we ask them to pray for us.